My name is Natalie Brooks. I was 34, and according to my family, I had wasted every opportunity they had given me. For 15 years, my parents thought I was an unemployed failure struggling to survive. They never knew what I truly did for a living, until Grandma sent me a coded plea for help. Exactly 30 minutes later, I arrived at their door with 2 police officers. They believed I survived on temporary jobs and money secretly handed to me by my grandmother. I allowed them to believe it because I was actually a senior forensic investigator specializing in financial fraud and elder exploitation, and revealing that truth would have given my father another weapon. That evening, my phone displayed a photograph of a blue porcelain cup with its handle facing the front door. Beneath it were 6 words. The flower tin is empty again. When I was 12, my grandmother had hidden my first academic medal inside a flower tin after my father accused me of embarrassing him by showing off. She taught me that the blue cup facing the door meant she could not speak freely, while the empty flower tin meant someone had taken something important. This was not nostalgia. It was an emergency. Have you ever hidden your success because you knew your own family might use it against you? I requested an immediate welfare check and explained the coded distress signal. 30 minutes later, I stood outside my childhood home with 2 uniformed officers. When the door opened, my father looked at me, then at the badges. His expression showed recognition, not surprise. Before either officer spoke, he leaned close and whispered something proving he had known my secret far longer than I imagined. Before I tell you what he said, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it where you are? Where are you watching from? And what is the weather like there? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. My father's name was Tom Brooks. He was a respected financial advisor who donated to senior centers, a smile she used whenever strangers were watching. Tom told the officers I had a history of overreacting and had become unstable after losing my last job. He delivered the lie calmly because his cruelty was most effective when it sounded reasonable. He did not insult me directly. Instead, he lowered his voice, looked embarrassed on my behalf, and made the officers feel as if they had been dragged into a private family misunderstanding. One officer asked to see my grandmother, Judy. Tom claimed she was asleep and confused by medication, but the officers insisted on speaking with her. Judy appeared in the hallway wearing a cardigan buttoned incorrectly. She looked smaller than she had 2 weeks earlier, and the woman who once refused to leave home without lipstick now had a faint bruise beneath one wrist, partly hidden by her sleeve. When asked whether she felt safe, she glanced at Tom before whispering that she was fine. The officers could not remove anyone based only on suspicion, but they separated her from Tom long enough to ask basic questions. While they spoke, I noticed a faded blue ribbon tied around her sewing box. It was the ribbon from my childhood medal. At 12, I had stood crying in Judy's kitchen, while Tom ordered me to throw away the medal because my achievement made other family members uncomfortable. He had said success was unattractive when it made other people feel small. Judy retrieved the medal from the trash, wrapped it in that ribbon, and hid it in the flower tin. Some people don't hate your weakness, she had told me. They hate the proof that you were never weak. Now that ribbon was an instruction. When Tom stepped away, Judy pushed the sewing box toward me with her foot. I did not open it immediately. I photographed its location, asked an officer to witness Judy giving it to me, and recorded her consent. Because I was related to everyone involved, the chain of custody had to be flawless. Tom returned and ordered me out, but Judy raised her head. She is my guest. Tom told her she was tired and reached toward her shoulder as if guiding a confused child. Judy moved away from his hand. I invited her, she repeated. The officers documented his attempt to override her decision, along with Judy's visible reaction when he approached. Outside, Tom followed me to the sidewalk. Once the officers were beyond hearing range, his pleasant expression vanished. You should have stayed invisible, he said. Your employer will hear about this. For 15 years, my family had supposedly believed I was unemployed. He should not have known there was an employer to contact. Which employer? I asked. He smiled as if I had finally solved a riddle he had been enjoying alone. Exactly. Then he returned inside. I drove directly to my agency's secure office, contacted my supervisor, and disclosed the conflict before touching anything. She removed me from any official role in the investigation and assigned the evidence review to Edward Hale, a forensic accountant who had worked beside me for 6 years. Edward knew my work habits, understood evidence preservation, and had never once asked why my family believed I did temporary research jobs. With my supervisor present, we opened the sewing box. Inside were 3 bank envelopes, an old brass key, a flash drive, a handwritten ledger, my medal, and a small pharmacy bottle containing pills Judy had stopped taking because they made her disoriented. The prescription label showed that Tom had recently changed the dispensing pharmacy. The first envelope contained withdrawal notices totaling more than $187,000. The second held documents transferring partial ownership of Judy's home into a company called North Star Care Solutions. The third contained a durable power of attorney carrying Judy's signature. The signature looked convincing, but the witness listed beneath it had died 11 months before the document was supposedly signed. North Star claimed my full legal name, birth date, and electronic signature appeared on the registration, along with an old apartment address I had used when I first joined the agency. Someone had built a structure designed to make it appear that I was stealing from Judy. The flash drive contained statements, recordings of Tom pressuring Judy, photographs of documents before he removed them, and a short video she had made in her bedroom. "If Natalie is watching this," she said, "Tom has probably told everyone she is after my money. She isn't. He has been preparing that lie for years. He keeps saying nobody will believe the failure over the successful son." The video ended when footsteps approached her bedroom. Edward studied the records and said, "He created a scapegoat before he moved the money." Tom had spent years calling me irresponsible and desperate so that if Judy ever accused him, he could claim her unemployed granddaughter had manipulated her. One entry in Judy's ledger had been underlined twice. Tom asked whether Natalie's agency would protect her if the family learned what she really does. The date was 3 years earlier. Another entry recorded that he had requested a copy of my old tax documents under the excuse of preparing a family trust. Tom had known my secret all along, and he had been collecting the pieces needed to manufacture my guilt. Edward submitted the evidence through official channels while I signed a formal recusal statement. I could provide family history and testify about what I witnessed, but I could not search restricted systems, direct interviews, or make investigative decisions. Tom understood enough about procedure to exploit that restriction. 2 days later, he invited me to his office through an email titled, "Opportunity to Resolve a Private Misunderstanding." I accepted because refusing would allow him to claim I had avoided a reasonable conversation. Before the meeting, I gave Edward the time and location, documented that I would not building overlooking Manhattan. Employees greeted him warmly, and the walls displayed photographs of him donating to hospitals and senior programs. A receptionist told me Tom had personally covered part of her husband's surgery. That was what made him dangerous. Tom performed enough genuine kindness to make his private cruelty unbelievable, and he chose his generosity carefully so the people most likely to defend him would always have a personal story. He welcomed me into his office, offered coffee, and slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photographs of me entering my agency, speaking at conferences, having lunch with Edward, and receiving a service award. There were copies of professional publications I had written under an abbreviated name and a list of cases in which I had testified. "You told the family you did freelance research," he said. "Meanwhile, you built a career accusing people of crimes." I asked how long he had followed me. "Long enough." When I asked why he still called me unemployed, he said, "Because it was the only role you played convincingly." People believe what they hear repeatedly, especially when the person being discussed never defends herself. He then placed a draft complaint addressed to my agency's inspector general on the desk. It accused me of using government resources to investigate my family. Attached were access logs appearing to show that I had searched Judy's accounts months before her distress message. The logs were false, but sophisticated enough to trigger an immediate review. Tom explained what would happen if he filed the complaint. Suspension, internal investigation, challenges to my previous cases, and renewed hearings for people whose victims believed justice had already been secured. He mentioned 2 cases by name, including one involving a widow whose retirement fund had been stolen. He had studied which victims I cared about most. He was willing to harm strangers to protect himself. Planning. Continue, and your career becomes the first casualty. After that, we discuss whether Judy remains competent enough to live alone. He intended to transfer Judy's money, accuse me of controlling North Star, and portray the investigation as my attempt to hide my own fraud. When someone you love uses family loyalty as a weapon, do you preserve the relationship or expose what it was built to conceal? I left without touching the folder. That evening, Lisa asked to meet me at a hotel cafe. She arrived wearing sunglasses and selected a table facing both exits. Her hands trembled when a server approached, but she immediately became composed when speaking to him. I recognized the instinct. She had learned to hide fear as carefully as Tom hid cruelty. I expected another lecture about family loyalty. Instead, she placed a key card on the table and said it opened Tom's private records room. There are documents in there that should never have existed. I refused to touch the card. Entering without legal authority would allow Tom to accuse me of burglary and contaminate anything I found. Lisa admitted that she had signed corporate minutes and witnessed forms after Tom told her North Star was legitimate estate planning. At first, she enjoyed the lifestyle his schemes funded and ignored questions she should have asked. Later, she discovered that the company had borrowed against Judy's home, paid personal expenses, and transferred money into consulting accounts tied to Tom's firm. When she confronted him, he showed her documents bearing her own signature and warned that she would be prosecuted if she spoke. Lisa was not innocent. She had laughed at jokes about my unemployment, encouraged Judy to let Tom handle her accounts, and helped isolate her from friends. But she had also discovered that Tom considered her disposable. She revealed that he planned to move the remaining money within 48 hours and forced Judy to sign a revised trust, medical authorization, and statement accused that Tom secretly recorded meetings in his private records room and backed them up to an off-site server. He said recordings were insurance because everyone betrayed you eventually. I told her to make a formal statement to Edward and the detectives. She feared Tom would destroy her, release private messages, and leave her facing every charge alone. He already prepared the evidence to do that, I said. Compliance only decides how much more evidence he gets to create. Before leaving, she told me Tom kept a file bearing my name and had maintained it since before I joined the agency. The first page was labeled Contingency. This was no longer only about Judy's savings. Tom had been preparing for a confrontation with me for 15 years, and every family insult had been part of an organized defense. Susan Mercer, the elder protection specialist assigned to Judy's case, insisted on meeting inside Judy's home while Tom was away. Before entering, she told me about an elderly man whose daughter isolated him, redirected his pension, sold his house, and convinced visitors he had dementia. He died before the court restored his rights. Susan wanted me to understand that financial abuse did not wait for a perfect legal strategy, and that victims often protected their abusers because admitting the truth meant grieving the person they believed they loved. She sat across from Judy at the kitchen table and did not begin by asking whether Tom had stolen money. She asked what Judy was allowed to decide. Could she choose her doctor? Sometimes, if Tom approved the appointment. Could she leave without permission? Not anymore, because he claimed she became lost. Could she access her accounts? Tom said financial information confused her. Could she call friends privately? He had removed the landline and often kept her phone for charging. Could she refuse to sign something? Judy's hands began shaking. He says refusing proves I don't understand. Susan drew a line down a sheet of paper. On one side explains, control threatens, care protects your independence, control makes independence look dangerous. Judy stared at those words before admitting Tom had threatened to place her in memory care if she questioned missing funds. He had taken her identification, intercepted her mail, canceled visits from friends, and told relatives she was paranoid. Whenever she resisted, he reminded her that Natalie was unemployed, unstable, and waiting to inherit the house. He also claimed that I had once investigated innocent people simply to advance my career. I knew it wasn't true, Judy whispered, but he said he had documents, and I was afraid no one else would believe me. Susan asked whether Judy wanted emergency protection. I almost answered for her, but Susan stopped me. Judy needed more than rescue. She needed the right to choose, even if choosing took time. Silence filled the room for nearly a minute. Then Judy walked to a cabinet, removed a worn hymnal, and opened its back cover. Hidden inside was a notarized revocation of Tom's power of attorney, signed 8 months earlier. She had tried to give it to the bank, but Tom found out, declared it invalid, and forced her to sign another form. I kept this copy because I wanted proof that, for at least one day, I said no. She also revealed that she had deliberately written several wrong dates in the ledger. Tom occasionally searched her room, and the incorrect dates helped her determine which pages he had read when he later repeated the false details. Judy had not been entirely passive. She had resisted in concealed ways while waiting for someone to recognize the signals. Susan contacted Patricia Monroe, an elder law attorney, who prepared an emergency petition freezing disputed assets, suspending Tom's authority, preventing him from changing Judy's residence, and blocking unauthorized changes to her medication or medical records. Edward and the detective Tom sensed movement and began calling relatives, telling them I had manipulated Judy for an inheritance. Cousins I had not heard from in years sent accusations. One claimed Tom had shown him proof that Judy paid my rent. Another said Judy had always worried about my inability to keep a job. Judy listened while I read several aloud, then took my phone and blocked the numbers herself. I spent too many years keeping peace for people who never protected either of us, she said. I don't want peace, if peace means helping him lie. She then called her oldest friend and told her the truth without asking Tom's permission. Her voice shook throughout the conversation, but she did not stop. The emergency order was granted the following morning. Tom lost access to Judy's accounts, could not enter her home without permission, and was prohibited from arranging medical evaluations without independent oversight. Northstar's assets were temporarily frozen. For the first time, he had lost control of the money, the house, and the medical narrative. His next target was my name. Tom did not confront me with another empty threat. He filed the complaint. The Inspector General received documents accusing me of unauthorized searches, identity theft, evidence tampering, and financial manipulation of a vulnerable relative. A business blog published an article claiming an unnamed government investigator had created a shell company connected to elder fraud. It contained enough detail for my colleagues to recognize me, and within hours the story had been copied by several smaller websites. By noon, I had surrendered my badge, laptop, case files, and credentials pending review. My supervisor did not accuse me, but policy required my removal until the access logs and company records were verified. Tom had turned my secrecy into evidence against me. A promotion interview was canceled. An attorney connected to one of my former investigations requested my disciplinary records. 2 defense teams sent anonymous messages to my neighbors claiming I targeted elderly people for money. For several hours I considered giving Tom what he wanted, not because I believed him, but because innocent victims from my old cases might be dragged through new hearings. Judy heard the hesitation in my voice. He hurt your work, didn't he? She asked. I admitted that he had. Then stop for me. I told her I could not. If I stop now, he gets to decide what my career meant. He gets to say I protected strangers because I was preparing to rob you. Every victim I helped will become part of his lie. Judy was quiet before saying, then we finish it. But we finish it together. Edward later told me the forged access logs contained a mistake. They listed a server format our agency had stopped using 2 years before the alleged searches. The files also contained hidden metadata linking them to Tom's firm. One had been created on his office computer, while another had been edited through Lisa's credentials after midnight on a day she claimed to have been out of town. The investigators also found that the digital signature attributed to me came from a family tax return Tom had handled years earlier. Lisa called from a prepaid phone. Tom had ordered her to sign a statement claiming I pressured her to provide the keycard and threatened to expose an affair if she refused. She admitted the affair had happened years earlier, during a period when Tom was frequently absent, and said he had secretly preserved messages to use later. I told her to make a formal statement before Tom created one for her. The next morning, Lisa entered the district attorney's office with an attorney and turned over her phone, emails, hidden documents, and a backup drive she had taken from Tom's home safe. She admitted signing false corporate minutes, helping Tom persuade Judy to approve transactions, repeating lies about my employment, and allowing Tom to use her credentials. Her cooperation did not erase what she meant, redirecting medication deliveries, telling doctors Judy lacked capacity to make decisions, and filing a petition seeking emergency guardianship. He claimed Judy was being held against her will by me and Patricia. Each act violated or challenged the protective order, and each act created more evidence of his determination to control her. Then, investigators recovered Tom's recording server. It contained years of conversations, Tom coaching Lisa to describe Judy as confused, discussing backdated signatures with a notary, directing transfers through North Star, planning the false guardianship petition, and describing me as the designated beneficiary. He did not mean beneficiary of Judy's estate. He meant beneficiary of the blame. One recording captured him explaining the plan to an accountant. Natalie owns North Star on paper. Everyone knows she can't hold a job and depends on Judy. She investigates fraud, so when she claims she found fraud, we say she created the evidence. The story tells itself. Another revealed that he had paid a private investigator to track my education, employment, relationships, conferences, and promotions. The investigator even documented which relatives I avoided and how rarely I corrected family rumors. Tom had never underestimated me. He had studied me and concluded that my silence was predictable. Yet Patricia warned that he might still claim the recordings were taken out of context and that Judy had knowingly approved aggressive estate planning. Several documents carried her genuine signature, obtained during earlier periods when Tom mixed legitimate forms with fraudulent ones. We needed proof of present coercion, deliberate deception, and his intent to punish Judy for refusing. Judy proposed the answer herself. She asked Patricia to arrange a final family meeting at her house. She would tell Tom she was considering withdrawal. Julie consented to record the meeting, and Susan prepared an emergency plan if her health deteriorated. I objected because Tom had already shown he could become physically aggressive when losing control. Judy stopped me. You have stood in front of me since this began. This time, I want him to see that I can stand in front of you. I also want to hear him tell the truth when he believes he has won. Tom arrived at Judy's house carrying a leather portfolio. Lisa followed behind with a private notary and a doctor, who claimed he was there to evaluate Judy's understanding. Tom believed the meeting would restore his authority before the court reviewed the case. Patricia sat beside Judy while I remained near the doorway. Susan monitored from another room, and detectives waited nearby. Tom placed a new power of attorney, revised trust, medical authorization, and statement accusing me of coercion on the table. He claimed the frozen accounts prevented him from paying for Judy's care, and warned that the court might appoint a stranger if she refused to sign. The doctor began asking memory questions, but Patricia demanded proof that Judy had authorized the evaluation. He had none. Tom turned toward me. Natalie has already lost her job. She needs your money. I corrected him, explaining that I was only on administrative leave. Not yet, he replied. Judy asked why North Star listed me as an officer. Tom sighed as if speaking to a child. You wanted Natalie included. You've forgotten. When Judy denied signing the registration, he claimed she had signed more documents than she remembered. Every disagreement became proof of supposed decline. Patricia asked how much of Judy's money had entered Tom's firm. He called the withdrawals management expenses. Judy opened her ledger. 187,000 withdrawn, 312,000 borrowed against my house, 68,000 transferred to a consulting account, 41,000 paid containing the original deed, her previous trust, checks Tom claimed were destroyed, letters from his accountant, and a note listing relatives he planned to tell that I was financially irresponsible. He had searched her bedroom but never the bank, because he believed fear had made her helpless. Judy then produced a college savings statement showing that $96,000 intended for my education had been transferred into Tom's firm 15 years earlier. He had later told relatives I dropped out because I lacked discipline. Judy had secretly paid my tuition from her savings and called it a scholarship. You took her future, Judy said, then mocked her for surviving without it. Tom insisted he had invested the money for the family. Judy answered that it had never belonged to him. When I succeeded anyway, he created North Star in my name to steal from her and frame me. Tom accused Patricia of manipulation and demanded that the notary begin the signing. The notary refused, saying Judy was being pressured. Tom's charm vanished. Judy asked whether he would place her in a facility if she resisted. Tom leaned across the table. "You will sign, or I will have you declared incompetent. Natalie will be prosecuted. Lisa will lose everything, and you will end up in memory care where strangers control your life." Judy reached beneath her cardigan and revealed a recorder. "I wanted you to explain the threat clearly." Tom froze. Patricia informed him that Judy had consented to the recording and that investigators had warrants connected to North Star. Tom lunged toward the device. I moved between them, but Judy grabbed the power of attorney and tore it in half. "You spent years telling me I was too confused to say no," she said. "Watch me say it now." She opened the front door. 2 detectives, Susan and an officer, entered. Tom claimed his confused mother had been manipulated by an unstable daughter and ambitious attorney to describe Judy as impaired before examining her. Tom ordered Lisa to say the meeting had been voluntary. Instead, she stepped beside Patricia. He believed Judy would sign because he threatened all of us separately. Tom turned toward me. "I built your reputation inside this family. They believed me because you never fought back." I answered. "I stayed silent because I thought it kept me safe. You mistook silence for surrender." The detectives arrested him for violating the protective order, coercing a vulnerable adult, witness intimidation, and interfering with an investigation. As the officer secured his wrists, Tom looked at Judy. "You're choosing her over your own son." Judy stepped forward. "I am choosing the truth over the son I kept inventing excuses for." After he was led away, Judy stared at the torn documents. "I thought I would feel like I lost my son." I asked what she felt instead. "Grief," she said, "and relief. Like I finally stopped losing myself to keep him." The investigation uncovered 4 shell companies, forged authorizations, false contracts, backdated medical documents, and more than $740,000 taken or borrowed against Judy's assets. Investigators also found money diverted from elderly clients who trusted Tom's firm with retirement and care funds. Several victims had been pushed away from their children after Tom described those children as greedy or unstable. North Star was the scheme he considered safest because he had already created a believable scapegoat. A grand jury indicted him on charges involving elder exploitation, forgery, identity theft, obstruction, witness intimidation, false records, and conspiracy. His license was suspended, clients withdrew their money, charities removed his name, and regulators placed his firm into receivership. Within 3 months, his office had been emptied. Irregularities on junior staff. Lisa admitted signing false documents, helping isolate Judy, and repeating lies about me because accepting Tom's version made her life easier. In exchange for her testimony and evidence, prosecutors recommended a reduced sentence. She filed for divorce and surrendered money received through North Star. I did not forgive her simply because she cooperated. Fear explained some choices, but it did not erase them. My internal investigation lasted nearly 4 months. Specialists confirmed that the access logs were fabricated and my signature had been copied from an old tax document. I was cleared and reinstated, but the promotion went to someone else. Previous cases required review, and my name remained linked to the allegations online. Some colleagues apologized. Others avoided me because admitting they believed Tom meant confronting how quickly respect could disappear. I began checking parked cars and waking at night, convinced I heard him outside. Exposing the truth had not prevented damage. It had only made the damage worth surviving. Judy eventually returned home after the locks, accounts, medical contacts, and security systems were changed. She reconnected with friends, joined a support group, and helped other families recognize coercive control. Some days she still defended Tom out of habit. Other days she blamed herself for not stopping him earlier. Patricia reminded her that manipulation works by making victims feel responsible for the abuser's decisions. One afternoon, Judy asked me to accompany her to the bank. Inside the compartment opened by the brass key, we found the original deed, canceled checks, early records from Tom's business, and a sealed folder bearing my name. It contained reports from the private investigator Tom had hired to follow my career. Photographs of me entering the academy, conference programs, published articles, and the announcement of my promotion. Tom had written notes in the margins. Watch out. She must never know we know. Another page showed when he first began telling relatives I borrowed money from Judy, years before North Star existed. That was the final revelation. Tom had not called me a failure because he believed I was one. He called me a failure because my success frightened him. Every joke about unemployment and every story about my irresponsibility served one purpose. He needed the family to believe I was desperate before he made me look guilty. His cruelty had been preparation. At sentencing, former clients described losing savings, medical funds, and homes. Judy spoke last. She did not ask for revenge. She asked the court to recognize the years stolen from people who trusted Tom when they were most vulnerable. I thought keeping the family together was love, she said. But a family held together by fear is not together. It is trapped. Tom received a substantial prison sentence, financial restrictions, and restitution obligations. He was permanently barred from managing another person's assets. Judy's home was restored entirely to her name, and much of her money was recovered through frozen accounts and property sales. After the hearing, Tom asked to speak with me. A deputy stood between us. "You destroyed this family," he said. "No," I replied. "I documented what you did to it." He asked whether I thought the family respected me now. "I don't need them to." His expression changed because his power depended on my need for approval. Once I stopped needing it, he had nothing left to threaten. Months later, Judy returned my childhood medal. "I shouldn't have hidden this," she said. I told her she had protected it. No. I was protecting peace. Sometimes peace is only silence that benefits the cruelest person in the room. I later helped establish a program connecting financial investigators. Sometimes asking for help looks like a misplaced object, an unusual silence, a changed prescription, or a story that suddenly stops making sense. My parents had spent 15 years presenting me as their greatest disappointment. In the end, that lie helped investigators understand everything Tom had fabricated. He lost his firm, license, freedom, marriage, reputation, property, and control over Judy. I lost a promotion, several relationships, months of peace, and the illusion that my family's contempt had been accidental. The price was real. So was the freedom. If your family insists you are a failure, ask yourself one final question. Are they disappointed because you truly failed, or because your success threatens the version of you they need to control? My name is Natalie Brooks. For 15 years, my father told everyone I had accomplished nothing. Then my grandmother sent one coded message. 30 minutes later, I arrived with 2 police officers. By the time the investigation ended, the only life built on failure was his.
We appreciate your time and attention. This video is completely fictional and created only for storytelling and educational entertainment. We hope this story reminds you that sometimes the greatest form of justice is not seeing others suffer, but seeing yourself finally happy, free, and no longer controlled by the pain they cause.